All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining on another episode of Relentless Pursuit of Purpose. Our goal here is to help everyone enter into a confirmed, confident, and eternal relationship with the source of all life and purpose. If you have not already done so, please make sure and hit the subscribe button so that you never miss a video or an interview such as we have tonight. Joined by my guest, Alycia Wood. How are you doing? Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Oh, sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. Alex, thank you for having me on the show. I think we met several years back. And so I think this is the first time we've actually connected together. So it's good that we finally made it happen.
Yes, it is. Yes, so I want to start just so people can get a better understanding of who you are. How did you kind of get involved in apologetics, or what is your passion for apologetics, and how'd that come about?
Yeah. Uh, the passion for apologetics comes because I was that annoying kid in class. And when the teacher was like, "Oh, we're all done with class. Unless anybody has any more questions, I can let you out early." And then, there was me. I just had a question about everything. I just question everything. I love to learn about everything. And I just, was raised in a Christian home, but like everybody, we all get to a point in life where we start to ask questions about what this really means for us and how do I understand this deeper. And whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're an atheist, whether you're a Hindu, regardless of what you are, we all question at some point, and we should always question. And
Yeah.
so my questions began young. And I remember going around the church. I don't know how old I was, 8 or 9, something like that. And I would just go around and ask people just hard questions. And so I kept trying to find people who had answers. I couldn't understand the Trinity. I couldn't understand this idea of Jesus being here, but also being God. I couldn't understand, like, what if there was no God? What would there be? Like, there can't just be empty space because something had to create the space, and the space would have a color, which would be black. So something had to create black. So I couldn't understand, like, I couldn't figure that out. And I never really got good answers to either of those in church. But as I continued on in my education, literally stumbled upon apologetics. I was
Yeah,
studying, I was a criminal justice major and sociology
mhm.
major in my undergrad, and had to do
Me too.
oh, you were?
I was a sociology major.
Oh my goodness, I had no idea. That's so cool. I think sociology, total side note, but
Yeah,
sociology, history, and economics, I think, are three very important fields, especially right now
absolutely.
in our culture. Understanding that historically we are repeating the same mistakes as people before us, understanding how our decisions affect the culture around us and how
Yeah,
we interact as a human society, and also just how in the world we spend money. Just thinking
yeah.
how the whole financial system works. Total side note, but power to the sociology people out there.
Yes.
But I actually had a Bible class in college and had to go do some research. So I go to the library and I just pull this book off the shelf, and it's titled The Case for Faith by Lee Strobel, and open it up, and I was like, oh my goodness, these are the questions I've been asking, and
Yeah,
people are actually answering these questions. And like, wait a minute, it's called apologetics. And that's when I learned everything. Like, I learned about the names of certain people, and I saw they had like 18 PhDs behind their name, and I was like, I could never do that. So, but I, I never thought I would be here. I'll tell you that much. So you never know how things will turn out. But
you and me
then I
both.
went, and then I
Yeah.
went on to study some more, got my master's in social justice, and almost got my master's in apologetics, actually, and decided, why would I do that? Nobody's ever going to want me to come speak for them. That would be a waste of time and money. And then fast forward another 4 or 5 or 6 years, I don't even know, after my master's, I ended up actually spending a year in apologetics, and I've been a full-time apologist now for over 9 years, which is pretty crazy to think about.
Yeah, no, that is crazy, and I didn't know the beginning of the story, but my story is somewhat similar. I was coming out of my kind of past life, and my mom sent me books a lot, and I never read them. And the first book I pulled out the closet, just to be a good son, really, was The Case for Christ.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
Oh man, that's
which was
really
also my first introduction to apologetics. I never heard the word, didn't know what it was. So yeah, that's interesting.
It is interesting. I got to meet Lee Strobel about, goodness, was it 6, 7 years ago now? And I couldn't wait to meet him. And I just wanted to say thank you, just
Yeah,
because I finally had a name to what my desires were, and what my questions were. And it was just really cool to finally say hello to him. So yeah, he looks
yeah.
like he's impacted us both.
Yes, yes. Well, you all, we're gonna dive into some uh, difficult areas, maybe on a couple questions, but I want to preface this by establishing the foundation, really. So, Christianity is not a new belief system. So, how, I'm going to kind of play devil's advocate as the culture asking this question: how can we believe that Christianity is relevant for our modern times?
Yeah. I mean, and
Little
that's a
question.
question. It is. I mean, it is one of those things when you talk about Jesus and you say, yeah, he lived 2,000 years ago. And then you talk about his followers. Well, they also lived 2,000 years ago. And you mentioned people in the Bible and they were, well, 3,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago. I mean, and somebody looks at you like, you're nuts. Like, I look at how we've changed even in the last 60, 70, 80, 100 years, right? How
Yeah.
can you still even hold on to this Bible or this Christian belief system? How can it possibly be relevant for today when
Mm.
it's just so old, And I
Right.
think the thing that the reason why Christians do hold on to this moral system really isn't because of the Bible. It's because of the fact that our morality is grounded in God, and God has revealed himself through the
Mm.
Bible. So he's revealed himself through the moral systems and his character and his nature through the Bible. And so, in other words, it's not like, oh, I'm holding on to a book that's 2,000 years ago. I'm
Right.
holding on to a message that God put in a book from 2,000, two plus thousand years ago. That is still relevant today because of the fact, number one, God is still alive, and number two, that his moral system isn't something that changes because the morality is grounded in his nature and character. And when I say to people, well, Christianity speaks to the question of morality. Don't we deal with the moral Christian questions of today? They're like, yeah. Well, about the question about the meaning of life, Christianity deals with that. I mean,
Mm.
Socrates, all these ancient philosophers were asking the questions on the meaning of life thousands of years ago. We're still asking questions on the meaning of life.
Yeah.
Like, so all these
Yeah.
questions that we're still trying to understand. Who am I? How did I get here? Does it matter that I'm here? These are all questions we still ask today that Christianity still addresses. So the answers are still relevant because the questions are the same.
Yes. Well said. The questions I was thinking today about this question, and I would say like objective truth never goes out of style. It's not like it's it's only good for this time period, If it's true, it's
Exactly.
true. Right. And
Exactly.
but that also, and we'll get into this, but I think that's also the problem today, because truth is not confined by the comfort either that it does or does not bring. It is what it is. It's not bound
Mm-hmm.
by opinion or physical boundaries or anything like that. But today, and like I said, maybe I'm jumping ahead, the very notion of what I just said is kind of up for grabs, because the idea of objective truth is, I don't know, it's not popular, we'll say.
It's not popular. It's not. And that's actually the key word, right? The question is, people are okay with truth as long as truth is telling them what they want to be true,
Mm, wow.
right? So we actually don't have an issue with truth. We have an issue with being told something that we don't want to be true. I once asked a friend of mine, and she's an atheist, still is as far as I know. But we used to just have such great conversations. We were great friends. And I would ask her, has there ever been a time where you wish there was a God? And she
Mm,
says, yeah, like I actually do wish there was a God, but the God that I want to exist doesn't.
mm,
And so the idea for her is, yeah, I'm actually okay with this idea of God, but he needs to look a certain way. He needs to behave a certain way. He needs to act a certain way. And
mm,
I need to be the one to determine whether or not that's an okay God or that's an okay good. And so we like to have that sense of control where I can determine my own truth. I can take control of my life. I make my own decisions. Part of this whole Western individualism that we love. It's me, me, me. I do what I want.
yeah.
I date who I want. I marry who I want. I go to school for what I want. In Eastern cultures, they're like, no, you marry who's good for the family. You study what's good for the family because what you do affects us as a family, and that's truth to that.
Yeah.
But we love to just maintain control of our own situations, and that even comes to the notion of truth,
Yeah.
and that puts us in a bind because we essentially put up our own barriers to being able to know what truth is.
That's really good. That's a really good point, because then, well, this is a big word. I know people aren't thinking like this, but your epistemology is flawed at that point. Like how you're coming to know what's true is the wrong on ramp, so to speak. It's either opinion or feelings or he said, she said, like whatever, somebody on Facebook, whatever it is how you
Yes.
come to it. And those aren't valid ways. Like you could never get away with that in school, or I could never get away with saying, yeah, this is true because I saw it on Facebook. Like that doesn't work in real scholarship. So,
And we wouldn't respect our teacher if they said that.
oh yeah,
Well, let me tell you what I learned on TikTok yesterday, and I'll test you on it. It's like, wait a minute. And it may be true. Just because on TikTok doesn't mean it's
right,
wrong, but
right.
there is a sense where actually we pay money, we go to school because we are trusting the teacher actually bring us true knowledge
Mm,
and to give us the right answers. And so it's why you take a test. You want to the teacher identifies what the wrong things are,
mm,
right? When we throw out truth when it comes to the idea of religion or God, you got to be consistent and you got to do it across the board.
yeah.
But every day we wake up and we think, hey, when our boss says they want us to work at 9 o'clock, that's true. And we
Mm,
live our lives off of that truth. We don't say, well, I don't, maybe they mean it. They really can't mean it. Truth is relative. I'm just going to show up at 1 o'clock. That's
right.
not how we live. And we need to keep that same standard when it comes to religion. God.
Amen to that. I was giving a talk somewhere, and part of it I was saying that you know the subjective truth people, and they probably wouldn't call themselves that, but just for clarity's sake, everyone, it sounds good until you need something for sure. Nobody wants a subjective doctor, uh, mechanic, accountant. You want them to be certain that they did everything according to the way the rules in the body or whatever is set up, and you want to know that that degree on the wall is valid
Right.
before. So
Right.
yeah,
Exactly. You go to the doctor and you say, I think this is wrong. And like, well, I feel like if we just amputate your leg, that'll fix the problem. Well, do you know that for sure? Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, this is my truth. This is what works for me. So why don't we just go ahead and go and I'll live my truth? No, you're going to say, I want the truth. I want to know what is actually going to make me better. And
absolutely.
so, exactly, we can't function without.
So with that being said, kind of as our foundation, that we know, even if people aren't at this point necessarily agreeing on what objective truth is, I hope we can agree it's necessary to ground really anything, but definitely a concept like truth. So how is it possible, once again, for this ancient text like the Bible to know anything about how or about what moral system I should follow, you should follow, or anyone should follow, or to even understand the challenges that our day-to-day life brings? And I was smiling earlier because uh, today I interviewed Dr. Randy Richards. It'll be up next month, but his new book, Misreading Scripture with Individualist Eyes, which
Oh, yes.
yeah,
I
yeah,
have those books. They are great.
they are. And
Western
so
Eyes and Individualist Eyes. I have both of them.
yes, and I recommend both of them to everyone.
I do too.
And as you just highlighted, the culture we're in, we have to take a step back from it to be able to. I don't just mean culture in the sense of like sex and whatever people want to do. I mean the individualist nature of our culture.
Mhm.
We at least be aware of that so that we can understand things in context in the Bible, which, like you said, is to and from collectivist people. But because we're told by the billboards and advertisements and everything, and do you and YOLO and all these things, and you hear it all the time from growing up, and then you grow up and you're like, okay, do me. But that's not the way we were designed to function best. And that's definitely not the way that we determine truth.
Yes. No, it's definitely not. Exactly. I mean, I think you said it really well. It isn't, we what we do is we let truth be something we discover. What
Hmm,
we don't do is say, I will create truth.
good.
And we want it to be something that, it's just like you sit down with the math problem. There's an answer. You don't know it yet.
Hmm,
You sit there and you work at it, but hopefully getting to the final answer. Now, if you make it up, okay, you came up with an answer, but it's not the right one.
right.
And so the goal is not to just come up with something at the end that you like. The goal is to get to the end,
Hmm,
actually get to the right finish line.
yeah.
And that's just the way it is when it comes to knowledge, is you knowledge and anything else that we do. So yeah, I think you said it really well.
No, wow, that's no, I really like that. Yeah, I really like that analogy there with the test. So is with the things that okay, Christianity is ancient. We kind of talked about that, but it doesn't mean it's wrong just because it's older. Um,
Sure.
so answering what is the correct moral system, what is the meaning of life. Okay, so let's say I'm on board with those things, but then I'm still the skeptic.
Yeah.
Is Christianity restrictive when it says what it says about sexual activity, for example, that is best expressed in a marriage between a man and a woman? Is that too restrictive? And I'll just start there.
So you're asking me, is Christianity restrictive? The
Hmm.
answer is yes, absolutely. Quite simply, it absolutely is. But you know what else is restrictive? Uh, the government. The government has rules that says that we can't go around and just punch each other in the face 8 times a day without there being a consequence.
Yeah.
Your boss is going to be restrictive. I want you to meet these certain goals. I want you to do these certain things. You know who else is going to be restrictive? The grocery store, because those bananas that you want, they're going to make you pay for them. Like, we live in a restrictive world. Christianity is not unique. It's not different. Just because it's restrictive, everything is restrictive. And that's
Mm,
actually important, guys, because we cannot live in a society where there aren't rules and boundaries. If it was, it'd be complete anarchy. Everybody running around, it'd be with absolute chaos. Nobody would be held accountable for what they did. It would be a society in which we actually couldn't really function.
mm,
And so we actually, in order to have true freedom, it can only exist within a system of boundaries. One of my friends, Nathan, came up with an example once, which I absolutely love. He talks about how when you jump out of a plane with a parachute on, and you're looking at the earth, and you're slowly going down, and it's beautiful, and you're enjoying the view, and you love feeling the wind in your face, but you start to realize like this parachute is like a bit uncomfortable, and it's really like slowing you down here. Like, you really could be getting some great speed without this thing. So you decide, you know what, I'm tired of the restrictions, and so you just kind of cut it off. So
yeah.
now you are free from all restrictions. But what are you now free for? What are you now
Mm,
free to do? And this is the question that we have to think about when we say Christianity is restrictive. It absolutely is. But here's the thing to keep in mind: it is less about restrictive and it's more about wisdom. In other words, if I was to create something and you didn't know what it was, and you just took it and misused it, even in an innocent way, just because you didn't know what it was, then you come back to me and say, look, Alycia, this is broken. You gave me this thing and it's broken. And I'd say, well, why did you use it that way? And you're like, well, I didn't know. You didn't tell me how to use it. You didn't tell
mm,
me what it was.
yeah.
And what you see within Christianity, whether it's sexuality, whether it is the range of other moral things that go on, lying and gossip and stealing, and the list goes on, is that you see a God saying, look, it would be unfair, it would be unjust for me to create you and not answer these questions for you. You see how confused we are even with the moral system?
Yeah.
Imagine if we didn't have a moral system, a moral guidance at all.
Yeah.
We would be so incredibly confused. And so he gives us that so that we then, therefore, can actually know the best way in which to use ourselves. Because he, as the creator, knows the best way in which we are designed to function.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad there's restrictions. I think he would be cruel. I think God would be cruel if Christianity had no restrictions and no guidelines.
Well said. I love that. It reminds me, all these other things are coming back as you talk. So obviously my channel is Relentless Pursuit of Purpose.
Mm,
Part well, the foundation of why that was is different, but because I also think you can only ground purpose and meaning in Christianity,
mm,
it's kind of the end game to my apologetics. Know God and then know why you're here.
mm,
So
mm.
the example I've used sometimes is something similar. It's not as great. So if I come to your house
Okay.
and I confuse the purpose of the couch and the toilet,
Mm-hmm.
I probably won't get invited back.
That is a great example. I love
But
it.
I could say, well, you sit on both. What's the difference?
What's the difference? You didn't
And
tell me.
every, and
You didn't tell
so
me I couldn't do it.
yes, I mean it's not knowing the purpose for you, like you said, will cause you to misuse you. If I
Exactly.
said that right.
Exactly. And God as the creator needs to tell us. The creator knows how to use the creation that he created.
Amen.
And so that's the key thing that we have to understand. So I yes, Christianity is restrictive, just like the grocery store.
I love that you said it that way too, because I hadn't really thought. I mean, I do think about it, but when you go through life, when you go through any day, I mean, the stoplight, the everything really is in some way kind of guiding us or restricting us or putting a barrier. And that's really interesting to think about it like that.
Mhm.
Um, I was thinking too about this question. In some ways, it's not the right question because so I would say the correct question or another question or another way to phrase it is should sex be restricted to certain domains and why? And so if we examine the quote unquote restriction and that seems to lead to good outcomes, then there's nothing wrong with the restriction. And I think outside of Christianity, sociologists, anthropologists, psychologists, secular Christian tend to affirm that that's the best way to found or ground a society with a family unit.
Mhm.
So in some ways, it's kind of like the data bears it out,
Mhm.
and the Bible also bears it out. But I think sometimes with the skeptic asking these types of questions, they're putting the cart before the horse. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just the
I
thoughts
mean,
I have.
you won't have a strong society if you don't have a strong family unit.
Yeah,
That's just the reality of it. The
yeah,
breakdown of the family unit is this is where the sociologists come into play, but the breakdown of a family unit and go across the board in any ethnicity, nation, you're going to have problems.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think the challenge comes in when we say, well, here's the family unit that did it right and it didn't work, right?
Mm,
So that's what makes people say, well, maybe something is wrong with the system because the outcome didn't work out the way we expected.
yeah,
But I don't think that's true. I think we can still use something for the right purpose. But when we're dealing with people, there's all but whole range of different factors. When you're talking about an object, a spoon is always going to be a spoon. It's not going to change.
right.
It's gonna be consistent. It's not gonna hurt your feelings. It's not gonna yell at you. It's not gonna be
Mhm,
disrespectful. It's just
mhm.
gonna keep scooping your cereal.
Yeah,
Right. But when it comes to people, there's aspects of us that are just we're just not always who we should be. We're not always as nice or forgiving or as kind or as understanding, and it makes friendships and marriages and all kind of things hard. We hurt each other and we do things. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the actual rule doesn't work. Um, so that's I think where people get tied up in.
I think that's a really good point. So, like you would say, we have cars. Sometimes cars don't work or malfunction, but should we throw all cars away?
Great. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. So, I think we're working our way to the tough stuff.
Oh, that was the easy stuff.
Yeah.
Why should we believe in this Bible 2,000 years old?
Right.
Great. Reality. Great.
Right. Just a few light starters. All right. Here we go. So, how does the current trans affirming social trend kind of contribute to the perception that Christianity is intolerant? Well, we might need to back up.
Okay.
First, let's define tolerance. 'Cause
Ah.
it's so not defined well in culture. So you go ahead.
Oh, great. Well, here's the funny thing about the word tolerance. When I was growing up, and maybe when you were growing up, tolerance, like if a child was acting up, the parents saw the child acting up, say they're 4 years old, the parent would say, I'm just going to tolerate this for another 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah.
In other words, what the parent was saying is, I disagree with this behavior, but I'm just going to not do anything about it for just a couple more minutes.
Right.
To be intolerant and say, look, I'm not tolerating this anymore, was when the parent said, still, I disagree with your behavior and I'm going to do something about it. So
Right.
tolerance traditionally meant I disagree with what you're doing, but I'm putting up with it, or I'm intolerant and I'm not putting up with it. And as words do, meanings change and things change. And when my mother was growing up, she's not from this country, but when she was growing up, you would talk about, back when life was simple and I was gay, and that meant I was happy,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's how she would use that word when I was growing up, and that's what it mean happy. For using that word today would mean something very different, right?
Yeah.
And words do this; they change their meanings, and that's kind of a normal part of society. But what we have now is we have this word meaning intolerance, which says to the person that I won't put up with you, and because I won't put up with you, I'm a hateful, spiteful person, and I think that you're despicable. And it's taken on a whole new personal meaning. Whereas before, when the mother said, "I'm just going to tolerate what this kid is doing for a little bit, and then I'm going to be done with it," this didn't mean my child is devalued. They are less than human. They are despicable. They are garbage. They're not. Their life isn't worth living. That's not what it meant, and it didn't mean it for the mother. Then it just meant I disagree with what you're doing, and I don't want to be okay with it. And what we've done is we've personalized this, and we've made intolerance to be about that you have to 100% accept the behavior. So it's completely switching it.
Mm-hmm.
Like to tolerate it means I completely accept the behavior without any issues. And if I don't, then I'm a hateful, spiteful person. And so we really need to understand here that we put ourselves as a society into a place where somebody can't say I disagree,
Right.
and I still think you're an amazing, beautiful, great person. Where is that in our society? Like we've taken that out.
Yeah.
And the reality is we've only taken it out in the pop culture. I mean, friendships, marriages, people do this all the time. Yeah, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I don't buy that, or I disagree with that. We do it all the time, and we move on with our lives.
Yeah.
It's just in the bigger culture that they like to create an even bigger divide and say we hate this group because
Right.
they disagree with us.
And on social media.
Social media is king of this.
I agree. And even though we're on it right now, but I'm trying to do some good things on it. I mean, trying to add some value to this land of the socials. So you said something so key, the key word, because I usually explain in a very similar way that it's not a theological issue we're having. This is a grammar, this is a language issue. This is a English language study 101 issue. That tolerance, by definition, a prerequisite for it is disagreement.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you said, that mother disagreed with the behavior, but they're going to tolerate it. Therefore, in order for me to tolerate you, if that's what your goal is, right, I have to disagree with you first.
I have to disagree with you first.
And yeah, that part gets missed so often.
Yeah. Exactly. It gets missed so often. Yeah. But this is once again, we change things to work for us, right? We want it to work a certain way. And so, we ignore certain parts of definitions or things like that.
Right. But now that we have defined it, how does the current trans affirming social trend contribute to the perception that Christianity is intolerant?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Part of this is the fault of Christians, number one. Okay. This is something that Christians do need to own, is Christianity, even in my lifetime, has a really bad rap when it comes to the LGBTQ issue. It's been an embarrassment to me. I remember, goodness, dating myself, but 20 some odd years ago, talking with some, I used to be involved with prison ministries, and I would go to maximum security prison, medium security prison. I used to do all kind of stuff. And I remember somebody saying to me, "Wow, you go to prison. That's so amazing to go in there and to speak at the chapel services and talk to the guys there. That's really great." It's in the Bible. I mean, this kind of idea of reaching out to people, it's fine. But then she mentioned to me that she had a gay relative, and that she didn't really like associating with that person. And I remember thinking, I literally go into prisons with people who have committed horrific crimes, and that's when I'm doing the work of God.
Yeah.
But to love your relative who is doing things that you disagree with is like you won't even have anything to do with them. I just remember being so like, wow, that just didn't seem to connect for me. And then I would hear Christians say all kind of things publicly, and just the way we would say things from microphones, pulpits, wherever it was mortifying. And so there is this aspect where the church has had to, let me say this, friends, you need to be careful who you oppress, because no people group stays oppressed forever. And at some point, they come up out of their oppression and they remember their oppressor.
Mm.
And right now, the church is at battle with the LGBTQ community because they remember who hurt them. They remember the people who rejoiced when they died of AIDS.
Mm.
Now, with that said, moving on to the trans, I will say that I think this is an issue the church does need to get better on responding to. But I will say, I think the Bible is clear that there is male and there female, and that we are created that way. I think it says it right from the very beginning of the Bible in Genesis chapter 1, when it talks about in the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. That Hebrew word creating is talking about forming. This is a physical description. Regardless of that, though, the reality is that when you put the Bible aside and you actually look at the information that is coming from the culture on this particular issue, I actually don't see Christianity as being intolerant. I see a culture that is starting to say, wait a minute, this is not okay. We're not going to, we have to stop. We have to intervene. We can't just say, hey, it's no big deal and I'm going to sit back. We actually have to intervene and say, you can't do this. The idea that what's happening, especially with young girls and the transition is happening with young girls, the fact that it's happening so frequently, people know now this is a social contagion type situation. This is heavily influenced by Reddit, by TikTok, by YouTube. Young girls who are already struggling with various things in life, ADD and anxiety and depression and all of these kind of things that are even autism, and they're already struggling with their identity as teenagers, and and being female, are told basically from social media that the reason why you don't like yourself, the reason why you're depressed is because you're actually trans. And they say, see how happy I am because I've transitioned. You need to transition and you'll be happy. And so we've seen all of these young girls that have transitioned and transition and realize on the other end, actually, a lot of them are saying, actually, I'm not happier. And it's actually, oftentimes it can be too late, depending on how much longer they have regrets. They may have already gotten surgery, all of these kind of things. And so the idea that it's social contagion comes not from Genesis 1. It's coming from journalists. It's coming from scientists. It's coming from sociologists. It's coming from the culture that is seeing a problem now. And it's also strikingly coming from the idea from people who have transitioned or people who are LGBTQ affirming, who are saying something is wrong here. And if you Google, you will see that there's many people who have transitioned. They're called detransitioners now, or desisters, depending on how far along they were in the journey there earlier on.
That was the next thing I wanted to ask about. So go ahead and explain what that is for everybody that doesn't know, because I've been following it. I know you've been following it, but the news apparently hasn't, because they don't ever say anything about this part. So explain what this is and why it is the ugly, I don't know, stepchild. I shouldn't say it like that, but the unintended consequence of allowing this to happen. So yeah,
it's actually something that's, I think, as any person, religious or not, it should break your heart what's happening. And it's truly, I've watched the videos of these young girls now 24, 25 crying their eyes out, saying, why didn't somebody just talk to me, give me therapy for my depression? I didn't know what I was doing at 14 years old or 15 years old. I didn't know what was happening. And for those of you who don't understand, when you're a young girl and you decide that you want to transition, you are given, you can have like maybe an evaluation or two by a therapist. As soon as you get it approved by a therapist, you get sent to the doctor and you can begin to start hormones or puberty blockers, essentially. So for young girls, they're going to take testosterone. And what's going to happen is after 3 months, the effects of testosterone are permanent. So in other words, the facial hair that you grew from the 3 months you're on testosterone, that is permanent, even if you leave, or even if you get off testosterone. The restructuring of the body fat, because women and men they carry body fat differently. Well, the testosterone shuffles that around. The redistribution of that is going to be permanent. That low voice you now have is going to be permanent, even if you go off of it. But because testosterone has been linked to, I think, is it uterine cancer, Mike? I think it's uterine cancer. Then what they do after you're on it for a certain amount of years, they actually recommend that you get a hysterectomy to lower it so that you don't struggle from any kind of cancers.
Mm.
And so as a result, now they're 24, 25, 26. They're not able to have children. All of a sudden they start to like their body, which people normally do come mid-20s. They get over this phase of I hate myself to, okay, I'm actually okay in my own skin.
Mm-hmm.
And now they look at themselves and they realize they've mutilated themselves and there's no going back. And so the detransitioners are those who have gone through the surgery and are saying on the other side, and they're saying, this is horrible, please don't do this. And they are trying to warn everybody else.
Yeah.
And they are really trying to fight back. And there's even people, I read an article recently by a woman named Jamie Reed. I cannot remember the name of the article. It's really bad, but she worked at a Missouri like hospital or clinic. If you Google her name, Jamie Reed, Missouri, it'll probably come up. And she is she would identify as queer, and she's married to a trans man, meaning they were born female,
Okay.
transitioned to man. So she's not anti-trans,
Mm.
but so she worked at a youth transgender clinic
Mm.
for several years to help out and help kids transition until she started to realize, wait a minute, something's wrong here. This is a massive problem. And so she wrote a fascinating article that came out like a week or two ago that I'd encourage people to look at. So what we're seeing, guys, is the effects of social media. Because you know what else we're seeing? It's not just trans. We're starting to see an upsurge in tics and young girls who have tics. So they're seeing each other like do tics on social media. All of a sudden they feel like they have tics.
Hmm.
And so doctors are seeing young girls come in with all of these just anomalies that they really shouldn't be having. So
Hmm.
we're seeing the influence of social media into these things. So long way of saying,
Wow.
it isn't that Christianity is saying when it's talking about how this Christianity believes that people are male and female. It isn't because they hate other people. It's not because they want them to suffer.
Right.
It is because they actually want to protect people from what they're doing to their bodies, only to find out several years from now that this was a mistake.
Whew, there's a lot to
I know.
digest.
I know.
And I mean, the only reason I don't talk about it more is because of social media. I
Yeah.
mean, because what I want to say is not hateful. I want to say that is like, hey, like stop before you do this, because 10 years later, I don't think you're gonna be happy with it. But there's a fundamental issue, especially with parents, that we're supposed to protect our children. And
Yeah.
we know, most people know, I don't think you have to be a psychologist to know your brain is not fully developed till, like you said, early 20s. For guys, it's a little longer.
A little longer, guys. We already knew that. We were just waiting for the science to catch up, right?
Right. And so we don't let kids drive till they're 16. You can't smoke till you're 18. You can't drink till you're 20. Like you said, we have restrictions in society. We have them everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not that alcohol and tobacco are not allowed to be sold or bought. You just can't do it until this time.
Right.
So if I know that you're literally not thinking fully clearly, because you can't at that age, that doesn't mean you're stupid. It just, you know what I'm trying to say. So you don't know as much as you think you know.
Yes.
Why would I allow a kid to make forget body, just any lifelong decision, or especially life-altering decision at that age? Just wait till they're 18, 21, and then say, okay, if you still want to do this, it's on, I don't know why that wouldn't be like the common, I mean, I'm not in the government, but the common sense agreement. But when you tell people that you know who you are best, now everything is restrictive and oppressive because my identity is rooted in this thing that could change tomorrow.
Yeah. And so, okay, so there's several things, and I'm going to try not to forget them because there are several things that are good. Number one, the government is slightly handcuffed. And the reason why it's handcuffed is because the way that the culture has framed this issue is they've married it to the race issue. So in other words, if you say you are against a person who is from the LGBTQ community, it's just the same as saying you're racist against somebody. But these are two fundamentally different things, right? And so the problem is that anybody who stands up from a government perspective is going to be called a name, is going to be criticized. And once again, we are a culture that wants their own rules and their own system and their own autonomy. And so what they what they do essentially is they are unsure of what something, a created thing, is supposed to be used for. They are unsure of its identity. Really, when I see what the culture is saying about the trans thing, and just so you guys know, I mean, 95% of everything I just said is just coming from non-Christian sources. Like, these are not Christians that are saying these things. But what's happening is they don't know what something's created for, because they've removed the restrictions that would be there. They removed the seeking the creator for what the identity is or what the value of something is. And we put our own things in there. And so we determine, hey, it's compassionate to give somebody their way in this field. It's loving to let somebody do this. Oh yes, and we give rights to 4-year-olds that we would never put them in the wheel of a car, but we allow them to say that they somehow know something about being the opposite sex. And what's so funny to me is I grew up as a total tomboy. My mother tried so hard with me. I don't think she knew what to do with me. I was the athlete. I wanted to play sports. I wanted to fall off my bike and dig up my knees because scars were cool. Meanwhile, my mother wanted me to be in beauty pageants, and she wanted me to go to etiquette school. And I learned this is where the fork goes and the silverware goes and all of these things, and the knife goes and this kind of stuff. And I learned all these things, and it was never me. I was
did I
always
lose you?
Oh, I think I'm still here. Do you see me?
Yes. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So so my mother would have me do all these things that were quote unquote girly, but I was always into sports, play dodgeball, these kind of things. And so we have allowed our societal structures about this is what women do, this is what men do, to determine whether or not they're male or female. And because we don't have a framework, right? You get rid of the moral standard. We talked about the Bible being ancient text. Well, look, it's helpful here because in the very first chapter, it tells us the answer to this question.
Right.
It tells us the answer to this question.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. And so when you get rid of that, now we're fluttering around and we're trying to figure it out for ourselves. And we're trying to do what we think is right, what we think is compassionate, what we think is loving. And it is breaking my heart to see what's happening. When you watch these videos of these young girls crying and begging people to not do this, and you see the hurt that they've gone through, it breaks your heart. And so it's really sad what we're doing as a culture. So this is not a Christian topic. This is a culture that is starting to say there's something wrong here.
Yeah. I mean, when I saw Bill Maher say something, I was like, oh man, this is something's changing now. Wow. So the current also aversion to objective truth plays in here too. And starting from that aversion to objective truth or any kind of meta narrative, how does that hinder people's ability to arrive at truth? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Because essentially what we do is we put frameworks around truth. So when you don't want objective truth, you put a framework around it. And truth ultimately it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you will only allow truth to be what you want it to be.
Yeah.
So that's ultimately versus saying whatever is true, I'm going to allow to come my way. And essentially when we say, no, I want essentially truth to be what makes me feel like I can live the best way, or makes me not to sacrifice anything, or makes me happy. Well, then you aren't really open to it. I mean, you're just not. I mean, do you want to be with somebody that you don't know whether or not they absolutely love you? And that's the thing. Or do you want to just live in a world where you're like, but I've created these things that make me feel like he or she loves me, versus knowing that actually, when I go into discovery and find out, do they actually, do they not? And I think oftentimes it's because we're scared of what the truth might tell us. And so we'd rather just come up with something that we can create it because that's safer.
Yeah. Wow. We're not psychologists, you and I. Sociology, we do study people groups and stuff like that, but that's not the same thing. So I'll admit that. However, we don't need to be psychologists to read the reports that anxiety, depression, suicide are on the rise. Um, I've said other times that it's amazing in a world where we've now, especially in these last 30 years, created so many gadgets that are supposed to make us happy and happier and live longer and all the things. But at the same rate, anxiety, depression, suicide has gone up with it. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's all those things' faults,
Yeah.
but I think it is, like you said, there's a core issue that there is no external thing or even external change that will
Mhm.
fill an internal void. And
Yeah.
that's where I think we can import Christianity, because now this is the solution. Like you said, this is the solution. And like you said, in chapter 1, it's the first thing God does is give us our identity. Thank you, God. Like that's a lot of weight off the shoulders right there for the rest of my life. um and I think obviously we're not saying the whole culture is operating under that paradigm or Christian paradigm, but as you said earlier, it keeps answering the questions the right way.
Mm.
That's worth looking at. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well, if there are no rules in how we arrive at truth, kind of the epistemology I was saying, how do you ever know that you arrived at the truth? That's the other problem, right? So if you don't know the goal, how do you know when you reach it? Like,
Yeah.
right?
Or
Like, if I don't know the purpose and the meaning of life, how do I know I'm getting closer to it or further away? And so sometimes we have, I'm not talking about politics, all that, but progressive, um, all progress, all change is not growth, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's an interesting argument. I think I don't know who originated. It may have been, I don't even know. I don't even want to say, but I know it's something Alvin Plantinga, I believe, has talked about. Um, and it's this idea of what's called the evolutionary argument against naturalism. Now, that's just a whole
Mm.
lot of hullabaloo for something that I'm just going to break down. But it's called the evolutionary argument against naturalism. And essentially, what it says is that part of the evolutionary process, or an essential part of the evolutionary process, is for us to evolve with with our survival being of great importance.
Mm.
So we evolve in a way that helps our species and helps us to survive. What we don't evolve to is we don't necessarily need to evolve to know truth. In other words, truth isn't necessarily true for our survival.
Mm.
What is
Yeah.
necessary for survival? No, so let me just give you this is a silly example maybe, but um what we need to know is, hey, okay, let's say there's a lion that's going to chase after me, and maybe my brain tells me, you know what, it'd be really fun, Alycia, if you see if you could beat that lion. Okay, I may not know that it's going to eat me. I don't need to know that, but I'm just kind of thinking, hey, I just need to outrun it, and so maybe I start running to outrun it. In other words, there's a sense in which truth isn't a necessary part of survival necessarily. And so my point is, how do we know that we can trust our brains? How do we know that we can
Mm.
trust our cognitive faculties, our ability to think, that what we think is true, or we understand to be true, is actually true, when that isn't what's necessary for an evolutionary process for me to survive? And so the reason why that's a problem is because truth, the ability to know truth, becomes a fundamental problem for somebody who holds to an atheistic view. But
Mm.
for me as a Christian, I can say I can know truth because my understanding and my receiving of truth came from a source that is not just morally perfect, but is also all knowing, is also all powerful, and so has the ability to convey truth to me and
Mm.
wants me to know truth. So that's the thing. Like, it's actually important to this being that I know truth.
Mm.
And so if you don't have a God, I think this is a great question. How do you know where the end of the race is? Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's something that philosophers have asked. If any of you are interested in looking at further, evolutionary argument against naturalism, and Alvin Plantinga has it, but a lot of other people have it. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I think what helps me to know that I've reached the right goalpost is because I found confidence in the character of the Christian God, which therefore allows me to trust him when it comes to other things that maybe I can't um, unpack as clearly or know to that same kind of extent.
Wow. No, that's really good. That's really well said. Well, so the next question then, as we kind of build to the conclusion is that the culture seeks to eliminate from history an individual or an organization or a church if their views or actions counter the current cultural narrative or expectations. So, what are your thoughts on cancel culture?
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, cancel culture. Uh yeah, I think it's counter to Christianity. And I've been quoted as such that I think it's counter to Christianity. And yeah, you have quoted me accurately. I do think it's counter to
Right.
Christianity, and this is why. Because when you have cancel culture, you immediately lose three important factors of Christianity. Number one, you lose the idea of forgiveness.
Mm,
Okay. In other words, when cancel culture, for those of you who aren't sure or aren't familiar with it, is essentially saying that because you hold a particular position or you've done a particular action, I actually don't want to have anything to do with you. I want to completely get you out of my life. If you're a famous actor, I'm not going to watch your movies. If you're an author, I'm not going to read your books. If you are Ellen DeGeneres, I'm not going to watch your show because Ellen was canceled. If you're J.K. Rowling, I'm not going to read your books. I mean, anybody can be canceled. Okay,
yeah.
this is like you can cancel somebody one day and then you'll be the one that is canceled the next day.
Yep.
And so essentially it's saying because of what you've done, I will have nothing to do with you. The problem is that if that was the same attitude that Jesus had, we would all be canceled.
Amen.
The Bible says that there is no good person, no, not one, that everybody has messed up in some way. So everybody has done something that God has said, I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that thought. I'm not okay with that action. I'm not okay with those words, whatever it might be. But God's response to the person is to offer forgiveness, which is why without cancel culture, you cannot have forgiveness, or with cancel culture, you cannot have forgiveness.
Mm,
And the second thing that you can have with cancel culture is the idea of grace, the idea that you don't get what you deserve. So yeah, you did the stupid thing, or you said the stupid thing, but I'm going to forgive you. And I'm not going to give you what you deserve, which may be a public lashing, or it may be, I'm turning my back on you as a friend or whatever. The idea is that this won't become the defining moment in your life for you. And what
right.
forgiveness and grace does is they make them not the defining moment in your life. And the third thing, and I think this is really important because this is an idea that goes throughout the Bible from the Old Testament to the New, is the idea of redemption.
Yeah.
And the idea that when you do something wrong, when you are separated from under the protection of the Father, the person who was caring for you. And I don't mean an earthly father, I mean in terms of a spiritual sense. Because of what we've done wrong as humans, we are separated from God. And so we come out from underneath that protective covering, that one that looks out for us, that cares for us. And this idea of being that in the Bible, when it talks about redemption, it talks about when somebody's redeemed, it's that they come back under him. And it isn't necessary that because they've done a bunch of really good things.
Mhm.
It's not that at all. It's actually that it's like he actually pays all the price for us to come back on. If it's a fee to pay, to cover what we've done, it's like that Father covers it. If it's giving up some cattle for what we've done, that Father covers it. The idea is that the Father took the blame for what the person did. And this idea of redemption was to bring them back into the relationship with the Father. And so if it's going to be all about our actions and we never can come back under that relationship, we're always going to be stuck separate. So I
Yeah.
think cancel culture is extremely problematic for the Christians. And I see Christians do it all the time. And I think it's wrong. I
I
do. I
agree.
don't think we model Christ when we do this. Now I'm not saying, keep in mind, I was a criminal justice major. I fully believe in the courts and the prison system. I'm not saying they should be abolished.
Right.
There are definitely earthly consequences of what we do. But what God is helping us to understand is how do we respond to a person who does wrong? And this is what I keep trying to tell Christians. And one day maybe they'll get it in their minds.
Mhm.
Is what makes us unique as Christians is not how we respond to sin.
Mm.
If I go into your house, Alex, and I steal 18 things from your house, even the US government is going to say I did something wrong. So any
Mhm.
Christian who says I did something wrong is just on par with the US government. There's nothing special.
Mm.
So what makes us unique as Christians is not how we respond to sin. What makes us unique as Christians is how we respond to the sinner.
Mm.
That's what sets us apart from the world. And we need to do a better job of how we respond to a sinner. And it doesn't mean you say it's okay that they sinned,
Right.
but it's what do you now do when somebody has messed up? How now then do you look at them and do you treat them?
Wow. I love that. How do we respond to the sinner? That's awesome. I'm going to use that, by the way.
Fine. Go right ahead. Get the word out. We need to do better on this. We need to do better on this.
Amen. Okay, a couple more questions. So what can we learn from the scriptures on how to communicate this message of Jesus more clearly, more effectively, more lovingly, with that second half of the 1 Peter 3:15 verse that we all know, with gentleness and a good conscience? Sometimes we may feel, some days I do, but not most days, but we can feel like, this is the most difficult culture ever to, anybody's ever lived in, and how does any Christian survive? And but the cultural obstacles, when we do, like you said, history is important. When we look at church history, like, no, it's not quite as bad as it was at the beginning, as far as being able to live and be a Christian and feel comfortable doing that. In some ways, though, that's made us less bold, maybe. So how can Christians communicate with love the truth that you've elaborated tonight, in a way that maybe it's not going to convince everybody, but at least they can maintain friends with that person?
So how can we disagree and be friends, essentially? Still.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think we do this more often than we realize. We, like I said earlier, there's so many friendships. I don't know a single person. I've never met a single person on the planet that I agree with 100% of the time. So yeah. I have friends that I disagree with about something or some things, and it's usually some things. I mean, that's it. Even within Christianity, you have different theological differences and things like this, right? Within theology, we sometimes do a bit better where we say, well, that's not a main issue, so we'll be okay. Other times we want to say, we just want to fight it out anyways. But sometimes we need to really, it's what we do in our friendships, our standard friendships, is we say, okay, you think, I don't even know, you can pick anything you want, that this thing is okay. I don't really agree with it, but whatever. When I become friends with somebody, I don't give them a 200 question survey to fill out and answer in order for me to know whether or not they meet the criteria of a friend. Right? So what I do is we have certain things in common, and that binds us. We are bound by our commonalities, and our differences are there. And when our commonalities are so strong, our differences get muted, and it's not as big of a deal. In fact, we kind of like difference of opinions.
Yeah.
And so all that to say, I think we do this and we need to continue doing this. There's so many people that have done things well, and I get really frustrated. I saw, I won't blast them, so I'll just say a major news outlet, write an article recently that just seemed, it was telling people that there was a battle between Christians and the culture, essentially. And it was like, these Christians and there's, and their stance on abortion, and it was comparing an organization to Christianity, and basically just talking about how, Christians and their stance on abortion. Guys, newsflash, Christians are not the only ones who are pro-life. Okay. Right. Like we actually need to learn, we actually need to know the facts behind this. That Christians are pro-life, but so are many non-Christians. The abortion issue is not Christians versus
no.
Okay. And then they went on about, certain trans stuff and I'm like, the culture is saying there's a problem here, something we need to relook at. This isn't just Christianity. And once again, they're just keep creating these tensions. And I feel like there's a sense in which the culture wants there to be more of a division than there need be. And so I say we just rise up above it. We diversify our friend pools so that when we do disagree with people, we can see how easy it is to still be friends with them.
Yeah. That's well said. I diversify our friend pool. That's an awesome way to think about it and say it. And I think that word friend is important because of the other conversation that tends to go on in the country right now. The tagline by some, white supremacist that does something, he had a black friend. That's not what we're talking about. when we're talking about friends, like a friend group, like people that you actually talk with, hang out with, of varied ethnicities and backgrounds, and that's in your
Religions.
religions and your normal rhythm of life. Not, hey man, I'm short on black friends, I need to go find like a we're not saying to make it up, but just it's healthy, it's helpful to us all. So thank you.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, last question. How does the gospel message, in part or in whole, address the intolerance that is branded as tolerance in today's society?
Mm. Well, here's the thing is Jesus didn't come to affirm the culture. He came to transform the culture.
Amen.
And as followers of Jesus Christ, what we aren't called to do is to allow the culture to narrate our understanding of truth and our
Right.
understanding of identity and our understanding of meaning and our understanding of morality. And so the gospel message helps bring clarity in a culture that is so completely and utterly confused, they do not even know who they are anymore. And so what it ultimately does is it takes it out of our hands to figure all this out, and it
Yeah.
puts it in the hands of a being that we can trust. And it
Mm.
doesn't mean that we will like his moral system or his moral
Right.
framework or what he tells us to do, but it does tell us that we can actually that it is the right way,
Yeah.
even if it's painful. As you mentioned, many Christians early on, suffered, gave their lives for their beliefs. And
Yeah.
so I think ultimately the gospel message helps tuck us back under this covering of a God who says, I will help you understand truth and knowledge and who you are. When you trust me, you put your trust in me. Ultimately, when we say, faith in God, we think of faith as just like, I'm just gonna believe it. Like this kind of like this like fairy tale kind of thing.
Yeah.
Actually, it's much more firmer, much more grounded. It's actually based off of evidence. It's based off of I'm convinced. I know this is true. Therefore, I'm going to trust it and put my life into it. And so the gospel message brings us into a state where we can understand what freedom looks like in a system of boundaries. We can understand who we are. We can understand grace and forgiveness, and the idea of believing in who Jesus is and living your life, um, following Him helps you to know that even if the things around me are spinning, at least I know I'm still on the right track and I keep going on
Mm.
this track and I'm going to hit the right end goal. And that is what I think is really helpful in a culture that is so utterly confused. They don't know up from down anymore.
Amen. Amen on all that. And I appreciate you sharing that. And I pray everyone hears our hearts and here's the facts as well. That this is not to beat down any person or any group. We're simply trying to provide truth, help people arrive at truth so that they can live better. I'm going to be all right, quite honestly. Like, so I'm not doing this necessarily for myself. Most of what I do is for somebody else, including the prison ministry, like you said. So, and I'm sure you'll be all right too.
Yes, I hope so.
Yes. Um, man, thank you, man. They're loving everything you're saying in here. Mic drops.
Oh,
You're preaching.
can I
Um,
just say Anna lives in a different time zone, a much
okay.
different time zone. So this is the middle of the night for her. So
Oh
hi,
wow,
Anna. You are a trooper
you
to
are.
be, yeah, probably on 2, 3 a.m. for her. So she's a trooper.
Wow. Hey, I respect that. Thank you for joining in from all over the world. Thank you, Alicia, for joining me
Thank you, Ben.
tonight.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll be back sometime again. So, everyone else, stay tuned. Is there any place that people can follow you or find
Oh,
you? Yes.
yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so in spite of all of our social media talk, um, I am on two social media sources. So, and there's a reason why it's just two: Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm not on Instagram because that Instagram and TikTok tend to be the top ones that cause mental health issues. So I just avoid
Mm.
them. Um, so I'm on Twitter and Facebook. So it's Alycia Wood 88. So Alycia Wood 88 for both of them actually. But Facebook makes you look for the public page, and I
Mhm.
think I have a pink shirt or something like that, and you can see that. And then also, um, I work with the C.S. Lewis Society in Tampa, Florida. So if you want to go to our website, it's apologetics.org. It's really simple. apologetics.org, and you can check out some of them.
See, only an organization like the C.S. Lewis Institute could lock down that kind of a website. Like they said, we're C.S. Lewis. They said, oh, just give it to him.
It's pretty remarkable. I mean, we just happened to be early jumpers on it back in the 90s, and that was just worked out really well. So apologetics.org. We'll be throwing some good articles up there over the next coming months and just things like that. So stay checking us out.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And thank you all for joining in. Until next time, peace.